Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome, great. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, welcome everyone. Sorry, I'm not in person there at the university. Been shoveling all morning. Got a lot of sludge, and then it was going to snow on top of it. It's snowed a little bit, but then it stopped. It's going to start again a little bit later. But I don't want to have a long driveway, and I don't want it to freeze over, and I'll just be stuck here for the rest of my life. All right, yeah. So let's see where we are, and let's take a look at our syllabus. Okay. So let's see. So according to this, we completed HTML last week. We introduced some fairly the most common used HTML elements. We learned about how to structure HTML documents, some just headings and paragraphs and lists and tables, a little bit of anchors on how to navigate between screens. By now, you should have submitted the first assignment last night, which was setting up an environment, getting a React.js hello world application up and running, and deploying it to a remote host such as Netlify. And then you should be working on the second assignment, which is learning all about HTML, some of the basic skills, going throughout the labs where you learn some of the most common HTML tags and navigation, and then applying that to getting started with a project that we will be working throughout the semester. Right, we're building the Twitter application to compete with Twitter.com, and so that will be working throughout the semester. And this particular assignment 2, you're working on just a few screens. But I think it's the home page, then maybe the profile screen, and then from the profile to be able to edit that profile. Just to learn a little bit about how navigation works, how to define form elements, like text area and drop downs and input fields, how to import images. So some really basic stuff for this first assignment 2, and that'll be due later this week. But it looks like a lot of you have already completed assignment 2. That's awesome. That's a great start to the semester. Yeah, I absolutely suggest you're really on top of the assignments. The course moves on at a quick pace, and if you can move ahead, that's great. So today we're going to be talking about CSS and how to style the web pages, right? Right now you're working with the default styling of browsers, right? So for instance, you should all be seeing a very boring Times New Roman font, right? Just plain old black on white background, and there is some basic styling, like fonts and whatnot, and how bullets render, and a certain amount of padding and margins between the elements. But CSS is going to allow us to override that default boring look and feel. Okay, so we'll learn the basics of how CSS works, some best practices, how to apply styling using classes or IDs, selectors and whatnot. Now we'll quickly learn that it's not very easy to make things look pretty using CSS, right? It'll be fairly frustrating that even though we can control over the look and feel, it's not quite easy to make it look at a specific way or look professional and polished and finished. That's why this week is just learning what the mechanics are, right? What the syntax is, how it works, what the how browsers use it to apply that to the defaults, and override the default styling. But next week, right, we'll use, instead of trying to make things look pretty, instead we will switch over to a CSS library that already designed by professionals that already have created a useful set of code snippets and stylings that make it easy to make our applications look pretty. Okay, so these folks have vetted these throughout the years, and so what we just need to learn how that works, right? And the only way to know how it works is to understand how CSS works, right? So that's the point of this week, right? Learn how the CS works. Learn how, the assignment walks you through several fairly simple labs and exercises to acquire some of those skills, but and then apply it to the Twitter application, right? We'll override some of the styling there, but we'll quickly find out that, wow, CSS is not trivial. So that's why most developers use a pre-built style sheet, right, that everybody agrees on, the developer team agrees on, right, and they go from there. So that's going to be next week. We'll use Bootstrap, Font Awesome. There's tons of these libraries out there. One of the more popular ones out there right now is Tailwind. And I certainly encourage you to try it out on your own, especially maybe in the project. You might want to play around with it. But I think Bootstrap has a nice set of pre-built, free, open source tools, right, and widgets, right, that are ready to use, right. Whereas in Tailwind, you would have to kind of build that on your own, and their tools and widgets are for pay. You have to pay for them. So anyway, yeah. So that's the plan for the next couple of weeks. So this week CSS, next week Bootstrap, and then the week after that we'll learn how to start writing code that allows us to dynamically render content on the screen. Right up to this point, the first couple of weeks, everything is static. Right, nothing changes other than you being able to navigate between one screen and the other. Other than that, the screens that you're building are pretty much fixed, right? And they don't change over time. Okay, they don't react to user input. Okay. All right, yeah. So let's talk about CSS. Another thing I'd like to discuss today, or maybe Thursday, the project, right? So the project requirements, what to expect there, and we'll discuss that. Also, we'll introduce the third assignment, the CSS assignment. Looks like some of you have already started on the third assignment. That's great. And so I want to formally go over that together. Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's take a look at the. I do want to cover the assignment right away, since some of you have already gotten started, and just see what is in order for us. Okay, so the third assignment asks you to let's see. So like all assignments, right? All the assignments have three sections, right? There's the lab section that is half the grade. Asks you to go back and style some of the screens that you might have built already in assignment 2. Okay, and learn a little bit about some exercises to learn some basic skills, right? Also, it does ask you to do all your work on a separate branch, branch A3. Now, branch A3 should include all the material, all the work that you've done in assignment 2. right? So you can create the A3 branch off of the A2 branch, right? So while you are on branch A2, right, you can create another branch A3, right? So it will include everything from A2. Another thing that you could do, which would be even better, is that you would merge the A2 branch, right, the assignment 2 branch, back into the production branch, right, into main or master or whatever you called it, right? Move that into the master branch or the main branch, merge that in there, and now, right, the production branch now has the code from A2, right? And from there, then you could create the A3 branch, right, and continue from there. Okay. So like that, you would always have in production, you would have the latest stable, right, content, right, from the latest assignments, right? So now main or master will have the A2, and A1 work, right? And then you can continue working on A3. This is very common in development teams, right? Where you always keep the production branch up to date with the latest stable content, right? And then you create off of that feature branches, such as A3, A4, A5, where you're still developing, right? You're not yet ready to deploy this and to deliver this, and once you complete that particular feature branch, right, then you merge it back into the main branch. But yeah, the main branch is not as so much a relevance to us, right? For us, for the TAs and myself, it's more relevant, each one of those assignment branches. Okay. So anyway, so lab, the lab first asks you to take, just learn a little bit about the specifics of CSS, how the language works. So CSS is an entirely new language, right? Completely different language. And the intent of CSS is to transform, right, an initial document, right, into a different document. Okay. And so basically we are given an HTML document, right, with all the elements, all the headings and paragraphs and lists and whatnot, right, and tables. And when the browser renders this, it renders it using a default look and feel. So what CSS allows you to do is refer to each one of those nodes, right, all those elements, HTML elements, right, and say, hey, you see that heading over there? I know by default it renders with a font size of 32 pixels, and it's black and white and blah blah blah. Okay, well, I want to change its default rendering, right? And I wanted the foreground to be yellow, and I want the background to be blue, right? And I want a font size of 28 pixels. Okay, that's basically what CSS does. Okay, and so there are several things that you need to learn, right? Is first, how is it that we refer to a specific set of elements, right? To say, well, how do I refer to say, hey, I want that element over there, or a whole bunch of elements, okay? So that's challenging, right? Just referring to an element has its own challenges. So that's one part of the language, and then the second part is, once you have or have selected which elements you want to paint or render or whatnot, right? Then you need to be able to, you're going to learn what are all the different properties that you can manipulate, right? The foreground color, the background color, the padding, space between, inside the element, or the margin, or even the position, where I can put it anywhere I want on the screen. So it's quite a bit that we need to learn, right? So that's the intention of the first half of the assignment, the labs. The lab, it talks about, a general example of an element that might exist in an HTML document. Okay, and one of the simplest ways to apply a styling is to put the styling right on the element, right? So for instance, if you have a particular element, this could be a heading, a paragraph, could be any, and you can use the style, the style attribute, right? To say that, well, I want to change a few properties on that element, right? Like the foreground color, right, and the background color. And you can apply the new values, right on the element. Okay. And so this asks you, the lab asks you to do that, right? Go in and change the background and foreground color of a particular paragraph. Okay. And then it goes on saying, well, even though you can do that, that's not a good idea, right? Don't do that. Right? We just show you something that you should not do. Okay. So, well, don't do that. Even though you can do it, the HTML allows you to do that. It's considered to be a bad practice. So don't do that. Okay. So a slightly better solution is to move those transformations, those styling transformations, move it outside of the element itself, and instead put it in a common area in the same HTML document, right? And where you can say, well, those transformations, this is the background color blue and the foreground color white. Okay. I want those transformations to apply to a paragraph, meaning that paragraph that I was applying it to. Well, I can do it another way by creating a rule here, a CSS rule in the style tag. Okay, the style tag. And then I'm able to apply that. So notice this has the two portions that I mentioned earlier. One is the being able to refer to an element, right? Pick out an element, right, in the DOM, right, and then apply certain transformations, right? So those are the two things that we need to learn. How is it that we can refer to elements, and then the things that you can do to the element once you have retrieved it. Okay. And so this is slightly better, but not all that much greater, right? It's not that much better. Okay. And ultimately, the best solution is to just move all this code, all the CSS code. So this is the CSS language, right? The CSS language is you have on the left side, you have what are called selectors, right? You can select elements, and then on the right hand side of the rule of these CSS rules are properties, CSS properties that you can manipulate, right, on the elements. Okay. So the best solution is to, instead of declaring it either on the element itself, okay, or even slightly better in the style tag of the same document, even better, the best solution is to not have it in the HTML document at all, right, and instead putting it in a separate document, an entirely separate document, and then refer to that document from within your HTML document. See that? So let me demonstrate. So last week, we had started playing around with creating a canvas, right? Let's take a look at where we left over. So if we go here in our index, right? Let's run that. In this code I shared with you, and I made it available on GitHub. You're welcome to use any and all code that I make available on my GitHub, right? So you're welcome to use that. Anyway, so we had started playing around with a canvas last week, and we had created something like this, right? Where we had four columns that we had a whole bunch of links on the left side. That I think we refer to it as the canvas navigator that allowed us to navigate across multiple places in Canvas. Then we had in the second column, trying to inspired by Canvas. This is Canvas. Inspired by this, right? We were trying to kind of reproduce it. So on the left side, you had these links to different places in Canvas, and then you had a second column where we had navigations to the course that we were currently looking at, right? Just like here, right? These are links that allow me to navigate within the course. And then we had, in the middle, the most important content, right? That is just a whole bunch of modules, right? Modules with resources, the textbook and office hours, week 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through, right? So there it is. week 1, week 2. And then on the right-hand side, we kind of like a sidebar, right? This sidebar here on the right. So let's play around with some of this. So for instance, we also had play around with the syllabus. We were just playing around with content in here, with headings and paragraphs and whatnot. And let me fix that. So let's take a look at what can we do within here. How can we style this to look like maybe our syllabus, right? Right? Or how can we style this to look a little better, right? Look more like maybe something like that. Okay. So let's play around with some of those ideas. So yeah, so let's go back in here, and for instance, here's the syllabus. Let me fix this. I believe this would be CS4550 actually. Okay. And so we had said that we can edit the look and feel of this paragraph, right? And so let me put this on the left side, and on the right, let me put the code here, the resulting styling. So for instance, you have here you have this course introduces blah blah blah, right? So this content is rendered by this paragraph right there. See that? And so we had said that we can style it by using the style attribute, which is a no-no. You should never do that. Okay. You might do it just for testing something real quick, right, and see if it works or not. But you should not do this per course, right? Never commit source code where you have manipulated a element directly, right? So for instance, you could say style, and I could say maybe that the foreground color is yellow, right, and the semicolon and the background, the background color is blue. Okay. So if we refresh that, if we refresh, notice that this didn't work. What? Am I looking at the right document? Oh, okay. Now this is the this is referencing the online version. Yeah, this is referencing the online version. That's why it's not working. Okay, now this is referencing the online version. That's not what I want to do. I want to work with the local version. That's what I want. Let's see. Let me open up the index. Where's the index here? Index. Oh, I see what's going on. It's all pointing to the remote website, right? It's referring all to the remote website. That's why. Yeah, there it is. So if I hover over this canvas, you'll see that it's pointing to the remote version of the content, which I don't want to do. I just want to navigate to the local, right? To the local. Yeah. So let me fix that. So let's go in here and canvas. Basically, I just want to navigate. That's the importance of being able to do this. To do it relative as opposed to absolute, right? I want to go into Canvas and open up the index document there. Well, it's the default one, right? So I don't even have to display it. So let me render that again, and let's go to Canvas. Canvas index. Is it in there? Index, yeah, it's right there. Index.html. Huh? Let me hover over this, so that goes to Canvas. Huh? What's going on here? Is it here? Run this. There's Canvas. Why is this not navigating? What's going on? Oh, there it is. This is my syllabus that I painted blue. There it is. Yeah, so let me go back to my syllabus, and I fixed the spring 2023, and notice the background indeed is yellow on blue. See that? So yeah, so we're saying that you should not do this. instead, right, you should a better solution to this might be to declare right here a style tag, an entire tag, and move this styling, right? Move it into the style tag. But if I move it out of here, right, this one is clearly being applied to this one paragraph, correct? So we know that this style is being applied to this one paragraph. If I move this away from this paragraph, I still need to be able to say, hey, it's that paragraph over there that I am referring to. Okay, so if I just copy this over away from here like that, and I just move it over here like that, I kind of lose the reference, okay, of which paragraph am I talking about. So somehow I need to tell it that it's that paragraph over there. Okay, so let's do that. So to do that, CSS allows you to create a selector P, right? I want you to look. You're telling the browser, look for an element whose name is P, the paragraph, and then apply the following transformations, the following properties. Okay, change the default color, which is black, foreground color, change it to yellow. And the default background color, which for the paragraph is really transparent, right? It is the background of the body, the entire body, which is white, right? So that's why you see white. But here I'm overwriting that, right? So now I should be able to just remove the style from here, okay, like that. So now if I refresh, you'll notice that now it's even that's a little the paragraph from before is still the correct styling, but now we have the second paragraph also with the same styling, right? Because this says select all the paragraphs, right, and apply this styling across all paragraphs. And indeed, we have two paragraphs, right? There it is, and there it is. Okay. So CSS allows you to style an entire set of elements that meet whatever criteria you put here on the left side of the rule. Okay, and it's it can get very, very complex, right? Right now we're using just the name of an element, right? But this could be fairly complex selectors on the left side, right? And we'll play around with some of those. So for instance, if you want to specifically target an individual paragraph, you could give it a unique identifier, right? You can say ID and say that the this is the goals, right? Okay, and that's the goal. And now here I can say, well, I don't want all the paragraphs. I want just the paragraph, whose ID is goals. Okay, so to specify in the CSS language that I want to do that is I can use the hash tag, right? So hash in the CSS language means an ID, right? That you can now refer to an ID, right? And so here it gives you all the IDs. The IDE is smart, right? It understands the CSS language and it parses our document and it suggests one of the many IDs that I had created last lecture, right? So I'm going to select goals. Okay, so this reads in the CSS language, select the paragraph whose ID is goals, right? And then apply this styling, right? So let me refresh, and indeed notice that now only that paragraph has that styling. Make sense? Okay. So yeah, so the intent of learning CSS is all about what does this look like? What are how do you write these selectors, which is not trivial. Right now we're using some really, really easy examples, right? But it could get fairly complex. Okay, so that's one challenge that we need to learn. And the second challenge is all the things that you can change. You can change the color, the background color. You can change the borders, right? The padding, the heading, the position, the width. There's just a plethora of things that you can change, right? It's just bewildering all the things that you can change. Okay, and right, and how that trickles right across the document, and how it affects not only the element that you're working with, right, but it might affect other elements that are next to it, right? So that's the complexity, right, of CSS. How do I select the element or elements that I want to modify, and then the things that I can modify, right, and how that might affect other things. Okay. So anyway, so we'll get to all that. So first, the some of the basic stuff. So yeah, so we move the styling from the instead of using the style attribute, right? We moved it over to the style tag here, right? And it's a little better. It's slightly better. But the best way of doing this is to not have the style at all, right, in the HTML document. Instead, move it into a separate document altogether. Okay. So what we're going to do is that we're going to declare a brand new document here, right? We're going to say that this is a new style sheet document. Where's the style sheet? Okay. And this is index.css. Okay. Now the naming convention here is that if we're declaring the style of a particular screen or a particular document, like an index.html, and I want to style only that document, then the convention is that you create a CSS document with the same name of the file that you're styling. Okay, so presumably here index.css is styling index.html. Okay. So what we're going to put in here? So what we're going to do is that we're going to move over, right, all the styling. Oh, wait a minute. I'm styling the syllabus. I'm sorry. We're styling the syllabus. So yeah. So let me rename this the syllabus, right? I just said that it should have the same name of the file that you're styling, right? Yeah. So let's rename this to be syllabus. Syllabus. There we go. There we go, syllabus. So right now it's empty. So we're going to move over the content in here. I'm going to just remove this from here, and even remove the style tag altogether. Okay, and I'm going to move it to the syllabus right there. See that? Okay. Now, if I refresh, you'll see that there's no styling, right? Because I just removed the style tag from my syllabus, so there is no overriding at all, right? We moved it to a separate file, but my HTML document doesn't know about this brand new syllabus.css file I just created. Okay, I need to tell it about it. It says, hey, the styling for this document, right, is you can find it in this other CSS document. The way we do that is by using the link tag, right? So the link tag allows you to link, right, two documents that are related to one another. Okay, so the way you refer to these documents is by using the href and say, go fetch this other document that is related to this document, right? So it lists, your IDE will list other documents that are available. So that is the document that we want. Now there's a whole bunch of types of documents that can be linked to an HTML document. So you need to tell it, you need to tell the browser how it should interpret this document that I am linking, right? What is it? And that's how you, and to do that, you use the relationship or rel attribute, and you tell it, what is this? Is this a script? Okay, is it a style sheet? Yes, it's a style sheet, right? So we'll select style sheet. See that? And you save that. And now if you refresh, you'll notice that we're back to being able to style this document, right? But with another document that lives outside of the original document. Everybody good? All right. Okay, so one of the questions is, well, why do we do this, right? Why not style just everything here in the HTML document? And at first, this was the case, right? When HTML had just come out, right? Folks were working on really simple web pages, and it was okay, right? It was very common that you would do all the styling right here in the HTML document. Now, as the technology progressed, folks, started inventing tons of new things and features and capabilities, right? And then you ended up with an HTML document that had tons of different technologies right inside of the HTML document. You would have JavaScript in here, embedded in the document. Obviously, you would have HTML. You would have CSS, embedded in your HTML. You would have maybe Flash objects, right, that would be loaded here, or you may have Java applets embedded in the document. So you ended up having in one single document, 4, 5, 6 different technologies, right, all inside one HTML, one single document. So it was just getting crazy. So there was an effort to kind of break out, all these technologies, and each one having its, their own idiosyncrasies and their own concerns, right, into separate files, and so that perhaps even other teams or other persons, right, other engineers would be responsible for all those other documents, and because I mean, CSS has its own skill set, right? There's it is just as complex as me learning JavaScript or learning HTML, right? So there's folks that engineers that all they ever do, right, is just do CSS to make things look pretty. Okay, that is definitely not a skill that I have of making things look pretty. But obviously, I know the technology, and I know what the syntax is, and I can manipulate things. Okay, so yeah, it's best practice to break out all these different technologies. JavaScript go on the JavaScript files, CSS goes in its own CSS files, right? HTML goes into its own HTML, and so on and so forth. So that was one reason why we broke it out. The other reason is that it makes it easier to maintain a document, right? If you put the style right here on the paragraph, and say, usually we want to be consistent, right? And say, and maybe we want to have all paragraphs across multiple pages, right? That you might have 20, 50, 100, thousands of pages, right? If it's a huge website, and maybe you want all your headings to have the same style, look, and feel, right? Now, if you apply these styles in each individual element, okay, and that means that the same style might be applied to thousands and thousands of heading tags across your entire website, right? So if tomorrow we want to do an improvement, or a fixing a bug, or we want to change the style of an entire website, it would be it would be a nightmare, right? Having to go and find and replace the style across thousands and thousands of headings across multiple pages, right? So a better solution is to group together into these CSS files outside of the HTML documents, that can be maintained separately, right? And perhaps have styles that go across multiple pages, right? And have a separate style file, like a generic or global style, right? Such as styles.css, where you have a global set of styles, right? That say that all heading ones, are color red on yellow, right? On yellow. And actually, how many? And here I have several. Right, and then all web pages can load the global style sheet, right? And this would be something that all web pages would do, right? And would load you can go up and then down to styles and say that this is a style sheet. And then you can refresh, and there it is, right? The global style sheet says that all heading ones are red on yellow, right? And now all web pages would load that style sheet, okay? And then they would then also have styles that are specific to that particular document, right? So this is the global one, and then specific ones that can override the global one, that are specific, that these would only apply to the styles for this one page, whereas this might be styles that go across the entire website. Okay, and this would allow us to easily, go back and just by changing the global style, be able to change the entire look and feel of our entire website. Okay, as opposed, without having to open up the thousands of documents and having to change the individually on those documents, right? So it's best practice, right, to declare them outside in separate documents. Make sense? All right, any questions so far? Sorry. All right, excellent. Yeah. Let's see where we are in the assignment. Oops, let me make this bigger. Okay. Yeah, so we talked about the style tag, right? We talked about the style attribute. Okay, we said that the better way is just to use the link tag, and this is what this assignment, this first set of exercises ask you to do, right? Just to practice, right, the style attribute, then abandon it, move over to the style tag, then abandon that, right? It says don't do that. And then finally, the way we should do it is to put it in a separate document, right, and then link it. So that's what those first set of exercises ask you to do. The next set of exercises talk about the this left-hand side, this right here, right? This left side, and this over here, P goals and whatnot, right? On how is it that we write and selector. So this left side is called selectors, right? This left-hand side. How is it that in our in our CSS rules, this whole thing is called a rule, okay? And the left-hand side of the rule is referred to as the selector, okay? And then the right-hand side is the properties, right, or transformation that we want to do, with the overrides that we want to make, okay? So let's focus first on the selector side. How do we select things? How do we refer to different portions of the document? Okay, so selectors, there's the most easiest of selectors. Well, the easiest one is selecting it by name, right? That's what we did earlier. We said, you could say that like that. You can select something by their name, just like this one here. You can select an element by their name, and then it applies to all the elements that match that name. Okay, that's the simplest one. But we quickly said, okay, well, no, we don't want all the elements. We want a specific element. So this is a paragraph whose ID is goals, right? That's one of the simplest way of selecting things, by their ID. And so here we have just a couple examples of a couple of paragraphs where we can select one paragraph versus another paragraph. Another way that we can select it is by class. Okay, we can use the class selector so that we can select several elements all at once, right? So, for instance, here the hash says I want to select a particular element whose ID is goals, correct? But what if? So this only allows you to select an individual element, and the reason is that by the nature of the ID, right? IDs are unique, right? There's only one paragraph that has that specific ID. Okay, but what if you want to select several elements? right? We're going to select several elements, and maybe elements that don't even necessarily are of the same type. Okay, and so to do that, we are going to be using the class selectors. Okay, let's see. There's a question in the chat. What do you need to specify and not just wait? Yes, I was going to point that out, Zachary. Thank you. Yeah, let me address that real quick. So notice that there is only one paragraph. Presumably, according to this ID, there's only one paragraph whose ID is gold. Correct. So the fact that you're telling me that this element's paragraph is a paragraph is actually irrelevant, right? Because there's only one element whose ID is gold, right? Regardless of whether this is a paragraph. Okay. So here, right, you're saying that there's a paragraph whose ID is gold. Well, there's only really one element whose ID is gold. Is irrelevant. The fact that you tell me a P, that it's a paragraph. Okay. And so it's a if you've taken databases, when you're selecting the multiple fields in a record that make that record unique, right? You can add more fields that make it more unique. Don't make it any more unique, right? So, for instance, I might be the only person in the university who has the combination of Jose as a first name and Annunziato as a last name, right? So that might make me unique in the university, right? Those two fields, the first name and last name, and the fact that I also have a unique phone number doesn't make me any more unique, right? So we would need to determine, what is it? What are the combination of fields that make you unique, in a particular set? Okay, so same thing here. The fact that you tell me that it's a paragraph doesn't make this any more unique, right? The ID already is enough to make this element unique, and know that you are indeed referring to that specific element paragraph. So notice that indeed, whether I have P or not, I'm only just referring to this element. Thank you, Zachary. So yeah, so the class element allows us to, or class selectors allows us to apply a transformation, right, to elements, regardless of their type, whether they're paragraph, whether they're their name and whatnot. Okay, so for instance, I might say I want to paint certain things a particular color, right, or a particular background, right? I might say this is background red, okay, and so I could say your background color is red, right? So I'm giving this class, notice that it has a dot in front of it. See that? Just like hash allows it to say that there is a particular element whose ID attribute is goals. This allows it to say that there are not just one, but there could be many elements whose class attribute, right, is equal to BG red. Okay, so for instance, I can now come here in the syllabus and say, oh, I want to paint this this heading. I want to paint it red, right, with background red, and I can say that the class, right, is BG red. See that? My IDE is smart enough to parse the CSS, know that these are the classes available, right? It says, okay, is this the class that you want to apply, right? And say, yeah, I want to apply that to course goal, right? Apply that to there. And so if I save that and I go back here and I refresh, notice that course goal is now red with a red background, right? And I can go around and apply to anybody I want. Okay, so let's Actually, let me not put it here. I'll put it in the styles here in the global one. Right? I'm going to say that the background red is BG red is red. See that? So notice that indeed I can now go around and apply it anywhere I want. Maybe this lecture over here, right? So if I go back and go back to my syllabus, and I can apply it to this one. I can say that the class is again BG red. And notice that it applies not only to headings, but I can apply to paragraphs. Right? I can apply to anybody I want. Okay. Or to this div down here, right? I can go back here and there's this div here. Maybe I'll apply to this one div here. I can say class BG red. Okay, and I can render that, and now it becomes red. Right? And because it's I declared it in a global style sheet, anybody who includes that style sheet can apply that class. Right? So for instance, if I go back here and I want to apply it to say Northeastern, okay, I can go back to my index page of my canvas here. I can load that link. I can say that href, href, the, let's see, I can go up one and then styles. And this is a style sheet. And I can keep going. I can say I can paint this background of this first row. I can paint it red. I can say this TD. I can say that the class for this TD is red. Right, so we change the background of that one column. Make sense? Right. Similarly, I can go back and say, oh well, this black on red, it's not very easy to read, right? So let's change the foreground, to be a specific color. Maybe make it white or yellow or something, right? So I can combine. I can create another style. I can say combine this and say dot bg and say foreground. Sorry, foreground. Right, and white. Now these names that I'm choosing are entirely up to me, right? I can create an entire vocabulary of classes that I can then go on and reuse the style sheet. Right? So those styles and apply them to any element I want. So I can say that I'm applying that the color, that the color here is yellow because I can't read black on red, right? So I can go back and apply that to my syllabus. For instance, I can say, this black on red is really hard to read, right? So I can apply multiple classes, right, to a particular element. I can say, BG, and say, foreground white. See that? So now both transformations are being applied. So if I refresh, notice this becomes yellow on red. See that? Okay. And I can go on and apply that to anybody I want, and say, I'll apply it to course goals as well. Right? So course goals, let's see, put it in here, course goal right there. So I can say that the foreground is white. See that? Okay. And I can refresh that and notice that I can read that. Everybody good? So these transformations are very granular, very granular, and usually they might change just a very few attributes at once. Right here we're only changing one attribute, right, the background color, and here we're only changing the color, right? Now you can combine these into more generic or more abstract names that combine multiple attributes. You might say, white, or why would I choose white? If I chose yellow here, okay, let me put that white here because otherwise it just makes no sense. I might choose another name that says, white on red, okay, something like that. I might change come up with my own names and say, and then combine both transformations, and I might say that the color is white and that the background color is red. Okay, So when I come back here, and I can now apply perhaps this more generic, more abstract class, right? That now applies multiple styles, and go back and say, well, I don't want to have to, be so verbose and so specific, and apply each individual style one by one. I want to use something a little more generic, something a little more abstract, more conceptual, and I want to give it maybe a more meaningful name, like white on red, right? So I do that. If I refresh, then notice that it applies the style just the same. Okay, not these, because these are still using the background red and foreground white. Okay. Now I could also come up with a, instead of you choosing names that are kind of very specific on what is the style actually doing. I might choose a name that is much more generic. Okay, something like highlight, right? Highlight, or important highlight. I might come up with a name, important highlight or something, right? And then choose these names, these styles or something, right? And so I can go back, and instead of using these very specific names that kind of give away what they're doing, right? I might choose maybe a more very abstract name, such as important highlight. Okay, and then refresh, and notice that indeed the same styling applies. Now there's a oh, did I spell it wrong? No, sorry, I misspelled it. So there's how do you say, not a war, but there's a lot of discussion amongst developers and promoters of CSS and how it should be done and best practices. On one camp, there's folks that are saying, there's the better way, right? You should be very specific on what you're doing here, and what's happening, and what the style is doing, and then you can go on and combine the styles, right, one by one, on what it is that you want to do, where you do BG red, foreground white, blah, blah, and be very specific on what's going on, right? And so you would end up with really, really big class combinations, right? Class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, right? If you want to do something very, very cool that adds margins and paddings and round corners and sets the font and blah, blah, you would end up with a lot of classes being applied to an element. Okay, and that is the approach of, for instance, Tailwind, right? Tailwind does a lot of that. Okay, where it declares tons and tons of these small little classes, and you need to learn them all and how to combine them, blah blah blah. The other extreme on the other end is that you come up with all these very generic, very abstract names, right? And then you name, you give names to each one of these things, right? Like saying that this is the goals paragraph, right? And then the goals paragraph has a very specific look and feel, right? And you apply all the styles for that, right? That this should be blue, yellow on blue. Okay, so this one does, the goals paragraph name doesn't really tell you what the actual style is, whereas background red obviously tells you what it's doing, right? So there's a there's a big academic discussion amongst the users of CSS on which is a better solution. So it used to be early on when CSS came out that the best practice was that you should name everything. You should create all these generic names, and then style them properly. We have been kind of moving away from that, and going towards more this style, right, where you have very granular styling but then this makes it much more verbose, right? So we'll use both. Bootstrap has a nice kind of middle ground where it has a lot of pre-compiled names that are somewhat generic, right? And those styles make it look pretty, but it also has a lot of these individual, very granular styles as well. So it's kind of like a nice middle ground, right? It doesn't make a compromise between the two. All right. Is there a question in the chat? What if you apply two classes that have a different background color? Absolutely. Yes. Let's talk about that. Right. Yeah. What Nalini is suggesting. Well, what happens if you have collisions, right? You have collisions where two classes or two styles are competing for the same element, where you have two selectors, they both refer to the same element, and one says that the background should be red and the other one says that the background should be yellow. Which one wins, right? And so let's so yeah, this here it talks about foreground and background, blah blah blah, and styling. So yeah, Nalini, yes, there is an exercise here in the assignment that walks through that issue, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Well, let me get through that first. Before I get there, let's talk about some of the easier stuff. So then the assignment talks about the box model. And now what the box model means, right? If you look at any elements, right? Any element like this one, so if you inspect, right, if you inspect here, we see what's happening behind the scenes, right? We have this div, you have these paragraph, the goal paragraph here, right? The goal paragraph highlighted here on the left side. See that? So if I hover over this, notice that it highlights that this paragraph over here. Okay. So notice what happens, right? If I scroll all the way down, okay, let me open this up and let me close this console down at the bottom. Okay, notice that it says that let's read through this, right? This tool here, the inspector, okay, this is going to be your best new friend, right, throughout the semester, right? Just get into the habit of when you are developing to bring up the inspector, and then see what is that the browser is doing, right? Because you are the one who's telling the browser what to do, and you want to verify that the browser is understanding what you are telling it, right? And yeah, so you notice that the goals here is indeed yellow over blue, and because we apply this ID and the browser is understanding you, that yeah, indeed, syllabus.css on line 1 says that there is a rule that selects the goals ID and applies these two transformations. Yes. Okay. And you can do the same thing for all these, right? So this one, BG red, background red, yes, on style.css on line 6, it says that there is a rule that selects an element whose class is BG red and applies these transformations. So when you're debugging through this, you have to verify that the browser is understanding you, right? And you say, well, I told it to be red. Why is it not red, right? And so always come to this tool and see what the browser is understanding from you. Okay, computers and programs and algorithms, they tend to do exactly what they're told. Okay, so you might have misspoken or said it the wrong way, and so try to understand what's going on. Anyway, so if you scroll down a little bit, you end up with this drawing here. What is this drawing? So this drawing, it's a box, right? It actually looks like several boxes, one inside the other, right? And collectively, these boxes are referred to as the box model, right? A model in computer science usually means data or some data structure, right? Some kind of data structure, and which describes something, right? And what the box model describes is first this orange, this salmon color. You see that it highlights above and below. See that, right? When I hover here, and it says that that's the spacing between this particular content and other content above, below, to the right, to the left. Okay, and you can specify what that spacing is. And it says here that it is by default paragraphs out of the box, right? By default, they have a margin at the top and a margin at the bottom of 16 pixels. Okay, and there's no margin on the left and there's no margin on the right. Make sense? All right, so the box model also specifies a border. Now, this particular paragraph has no border, and notice it has dashes. See that? It's all dashes. Okay, so we'll talk about borders in a minute. It also specifies the padding. See that? And it's green. Notice that it's not highlighting anything on the right-hand side, on the left side. That means that this particular content, this particular paragraph, by default, it has no padding. So there's no borders, no padding, but it does have margins above and below. That's what it makes it a paragraph, right? You know, it pushes off from the top, pushes the stuff below it, right, to separate it into its paragraph. Make sense, right? By using the box model. So the box model specifies margin, border, padding, width, and height. See that? Width and height. It says here that the width and the height are being configured by the size of the container, right? You know, whatever the container tells it, that's the width, that's the height that it's calculated as we interact with the window. Make sense? But you can specify, you can override all of this, right? You can override all these things. Now you can override it here in this tool just to prototype it or see what your changes might look like. Okay, you can specify and says, hey, I want to try it out and change the foreground color. So you can click here and try it out, see what it looks like. I can say, you know, color, and I can say that this is you know, cyan, right? And there it is. So you could see how ugly that looks like, right? You can specify other attributes right here, and notice that they're being applied right on the element. Notice that it added a style tag right on the paragraph. See that? Okay, with the styling that you gave it. So it is manipulating the DOM, right, as you manipulate the CSS in memory. Obviously, if I refresh, all this goes away and it redefaults to what, you know, it's loaded from the document, the CSS document and the HTML document. Okay, you can try out, you know, what if to the, you know, BG red class, right, I add other things, not just the background is red, right, but that the foreground is that the color is you know, yellow. Okay, so you can try it out. It says, ooh, I like that class. Let me go that make that permanent. So you can copy and say, ooh, let me add that to my BG red, right, definition at styles.css line 6. Otherwise, this is only temporary, right? If I refresh, I would lose this, right? But you can copy this and make it permanent in the text documents. Yes, and you can play around with some of this. You know, you can say, you can change the font size, and you can make it, you know, twice as big, right? Or maybe 1.5 size. And you can try it out different things. Okay, you can try, you know, different font, you know, font family from you can make it cursive, you know, fantasy, inherit, you know, cursive, blah, blah, blah. You can try it out, different things, right? So anyway, so that's the intent of learning CSS, how to refer to things on the DOM, and then what things can you change in the properties. Okay. All right, so let's keep going with the assignment. So selectors, the borders. Okay, so borders, for instance, we haven't done any borders, but certainly we can play around with that. So here we could say maybe we want to change the border. We can say border, and border has a lot of things that you can say, right? So border, you can specify whether you want to modify only the bottom border. Actually, let me remove that font size. It's too big. There we go. We can change the border. You can say border, and you can specify that the size of the border or width of the border. You can say I want it 10 pixels. Right? You can specify the color of the border. You can say purple, right? And you can specify maybe the style, right, of the border, and maybe you want it dashed, dotted, double or grooved or hidden, or inset, right, or outset. Okay, ridged, solid. Okay, so you can change that. You can change that all the borders around. You can play around with the size. You can make the size bigger and see what that looks like. Okay. You can also instead of specifying each individual property on a particular element, let's play around maybe with this one. Let's inspect this one. Right, and we can say border. So instead of specifying each individual attributes, right, that or property that you can change individually, you can most of these properties have a version that allow you to combine multiple values in one single property. So for instance, just like you can break out individual properties, the style, the width, right, and the color, you can there are usually these have a version where you can combine all three things. So for instance, I might say that I want 20 pixels. In the same line, I can say border. I can specify the width, the style, and the color all in one. So I can say 20 pixels, red, right? And I want it to be solid. Okay, like that. Right, and this specifies it only for that. Well, actually, let me change the color because it kind of blends in with the next paragraph. So let me change this to blue. Blue. There we go. See that? So and I can modify each individual like that. Right? Make sense? And you can also typically these most properties will also have versions that that allow you to individually manipulate a subset of the borders, right, or the padding, right, that or width, where, for instance, I might be able to manipulate the borders at the bottom, right, or at the right, or the top, or the left, or the right. So, for instance, I can say, yeah, well, borders, I want a blue, but the bottom one, or I'm sorry, I can say border bottom, I want oops, I can specify the color of the bottom one. I want it to be yellow. See that? Or green. Okay. Also, I can change the border at the bottom. I want the style, right? And I want it to be dashed. Right. So above, everywhere I want it solid, but I am overriding and say that the bottom one is actually different. Yeah, I want it to be maybe even thicker, right? And say that the width here is actually 40 pixels, so it's even wider. Make sense? Okay. So anyway, the assignment walks you through several of those exercises, right? So you can practice all the different things, right, using classes, IDs, right? Also walks you through margins and paddings. Paddings allow you to configure the space between the inside and outside. So for instance, so this particular div, we can specify that the spacing above, or maybe all around us, I can specify the margin. By default, divs have a margin of 0. There is no margin. There's no space between above me and below me. Notice that this border, right, is right flush with the next div, right? So there's no spacing in between. But we can change it. I can say that the margin right, is 10 pixels all around, 10 pixels all around. So notice that it adds 10 pixels above me, below me, from the left or the right. Okay, and or I can specify that I only want the margins at the top, right? So so notice now I only have spacing above, or I can say that the margins at the bottom, right, is 10 pixels. So notice I only have margins below me. And this is exactly what the paragraph does, right? The paragraph is basically a div, right, that has margins above and margins below. Right? So that's the spacing between elements, right? And again, you can specify an overall margin or padding or whatnot, right? That takes it takes all the different values and make them all the same. Or you can be very much more granular and just specify specific above me, below me, and whatnot. Okay. I can also specify the space within the elements. Right. I can say that inside I want some spacing. I don't like the fact that my content is so flush, right, with the border. Right. I can create a padding. I can say that I want some spacing that separates the content itself with the inner border. Right. I can say that there's 20 pixels, around, right? So is an inner spacing within the container, right? So padding allows me to do that. Now you again, like margin and like borders, you can be much more granular and say that I want only the padding above, below, to the left or to the right and whatnot. Okay, so just all these have versions that allow you to specifically refer to the top, the bottom, blah blah blah, right? So that's the that exercise here that asks you to play around with the padding and whatnot, right? And the margins. You can also specify the corners, right? If you want rounded corners, and you can specify the radius, how small radius or big radius, right? So if we have really big radius, you can have things that are just circular, just a big circle. So yeah, so play around with that. Then you can also play around with the sizes, right? With height and things like that. Uh, so notice that um, we've been playing around with all these styles, right? And now if I refresh my screen, it's all gonna go away. Okay, and so let's make it permanent, right? So this element here, right? This style here is styling this div here, right? This div that has the students are, yes. So let's create a, if I refresh, if I do a Control R, all my styles are gonna go away. But we can make it permanent, right? We can let's pick out this div, right? Let's give it a unique identifier. This is how about encouraged? Let's give it that ID. Let's give this style the ID encouraged. All right, so I'm just copy that. So this div here, right, which says students are encouraged. Let's go back to our code. Where's my code? There we go. So students are encouraged, blah, 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 blah. There we go. So I'm going to give it, use a unique identifier, and I'm going to say encouraged. Okay. I'm just going to grab that ID, and I can go back to, now, because this is very specific to the syllabus, I'm going to put it in just syllabus, right? So I'm just going to say, grab the element whose ID is encouraged, right? And apply the following styles. What styles? Ooh, these styles. I love that border, right? That's margins, right? I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, now I have made my changes permanent. If I refresh the screen, that particular div will take those styles, right? But before I do that, let's keep this one too. I love that purple, red, yellow. Okay, that's I think it's this one here. Yeah, this one right here. And so these are the styles, right? These so I'm going to make this permanent. I'll call this focus. So it's which one is it? It's we'll focus, right? Oh, I put a class BG red. You can make both. You can combine both a class and an ID, right? So I'm gonna put the ID. right? Focus, and the focus will have this style, right? A border width 20, border color purple, and solid. All right, so let's do that. So let's create the ID focus for the syllabus and say, ID focus, and I want this style. I want that border, that color, and that style. Okay. And the font, I think the font, we added it to the BG color, right? So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to put it also as part of the focus, like that. All right. So now if we refresh, you'll notice that my changes are now permanent. Oh, this is not yellow because oh, I know, because in BG red we make the foreground as well as yellow. So let's do that here. We'll say color yellow. There we go. And we have we have made permanent those borders right above and below, and the padding and the margins. Everybody good? Everybody still with me? Did I lose anybody? So anyway, the intention of this assignment is to learn the skills of how CSS works, right? Of practicing using selectors that use IDs, use classes, combinations of the two, right? And then so that's selectors, and that in its own self is challenging, okay? And then the second half of these labs is learning about all the different things that you can change. We have mostly been playing around with colors, foreground colors, background colors, right? The spacing in between, like margins and paddings and the borders. Other things that you're going to learn is how to play around with dimensions, right? How big you want things to be. So for instance, here you're be learning about creating a couple of divs, okay? And practicing on making different sizes, right? Where certain divs will be taller than they're wider, right? Some divs are going to be wider than they're taller, so we'll call it a class called landscape. And some of them are going to be square, where the width and the height are the same. Okay, so you can specify those styles, right? Width, height. So here's a div, right? So notice one peculiar thing about this example is that even though we are changing the width of the divs by default want to be the entire width of the screen, right? That's the default behavior. But you can override that, right, with width and height. But even making them shorter, the divs, right? We notice that they still want to be in their own line, right? In their own vertical spacing. Okay. That even though they might fit to be able to draw them in line, they still want to break the screen vertically. Okay. Now you can override that position behavior, right? By default, again, they want to be stacked vertically. But you can change that default behavior by modifying the position. Right? You can change the position so that you can move it to the left, to the right, above, below, and even cause elements to render on top of each other, right? Which is usually not what you want, but you can get away with it, right? So you are overriding the default behavior. So you have to be careful now, right? Because the browser is making a huge effort at making sure that things are not overlapping on top of each other, that things are not occluded, right? And now you come here and you start overriding its default behavior, right? Hey, if you break it, right, you own it, right? You have to be responsible. With a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility. Yes. So here's an example of changing the position, moving things to the right, maybe to the top, below, moving things around with different classes. We see examples where you can move things relative to each other, right, of where they would normally fall. Okay, with position relative, you can say, hey, I know by default the browser put me here, Okay, but I want to be a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, right? And so you can change it. You can do that by using the relative position, right? You say, to where I would normally fall, I would want to move from the bottom, push me up 30 pixels, and from my left, you push me off 30 pixels, right? So top and bottom, left and right, allow you to move things in that direction, right? So left means that I am. It doesn't mean that I want to. It means that I want a space, from the left. I want 30 pixels. From the top means that I want to be away from the top 20 pixels. Okay, and that's relative. So from where I would normally fall, right? Now absolute, allows you to now the position is measured from a global 0, 0 of the screen, right? These measurements, top, left, bottom, right, are measured from where you would normally be, right? From there, where you would normally be, I want to move left or right or top or right, bottom. Whereas this one, position absolute, right, measures these top and left based on the 0, 0, 0 on the top left corner, right, of the container. Now, normally the container would be the window, right, the screen, right? So it would be the top left corner of the window of the browser, right? So from there, I can move around and put me wherever I can be absolutely, right, from that corner. Now, there's also fixed position. Fixed position allows me to be in a place, right, but relative to the outside window, not the document being rendered. Okay, what I mean by that is that absolute. Let me demonstrate. This is hard to explain. Let me create here a lab, and this would be for assignment 3. And let's create here an index where I can demo this. I can say index, and this is CSS, right? So I'm going to say welcome to CSS. So welcome to CSS. Okay, and let's render this so I can show you. So let's run this. There it is. Okay, and let's create a couple of divs. And actually, I can just copy them from the assignment. And let's copy these elements. And there's okay, yeah. And the example was that we were demonstrating the dimensions, right? So let's create here an index.css as well here. So this is style sheet index.css, and we're going to copy that in there. So now index.html declares several divs, right? Declares several divs, portrait, landscape, and square, and applies these classes that are declared in a separate document, which are right here. Yes. And let's load that CSS. Otherwise, this will not work. So we'll say, actually, let's show you what this looks like before we do that. So let's render this. There it is, a portrait, landscape, and square. It's just 3 divs, right? With these declares these classes, but these classes in a separate document, so it doesn't see them. Right. So let's link them in. Let's say link href the index. There it is, and let's say that this is a style sheet. So if I refresh, there they are. The sizes, the colors actually were declared in a previous exercise. Which I believe are here. Color, where are they? I must have declared them prior. There they are. BG color yellow, yada yada yada, right? So let me grab that too, and let me declare it in my CSS. So put it up here. So yeah, we're declaring a couple of styles that paint things in a particular background, and then styles the width and the height. right? Okay, so let's see what that renders. Let's render. There they are: portrait, landscape, and square. So yeah, so I was saying, as I was saying, the position. If you say that the position is uh, absolute, it measures the position from this corner over here, okay? And what that's going to cause is the fact that, yes, it's going to put them in the correct place based on 0, 0. But when I scroll, right, the content will scroll, right? The elements will scroll with it, right? But not if you use fixed. Right? Let me demonstrate. This is not a trivial concept to grasp. Let me see, fit. Can I make this bigger? Okay, styling background, blah, 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 box model, yada, yada, yada. Styling corners, dimensions, right, we did that. Okay, position. So let me show you this. Let me show you these styles. Right, I'm gonna paste them here. So this says, I'm creating a position. I'm calling it relative nudge up and right. So I'm gonna move it up and right. And so that means that from where I fall, that's what relative means, from wherever I normally would be, move me from the bottom 30 pixels up, and from the left, move me 30 pixels to the right, right? And same thing here, right? So let me show you. I'm going to copy this position and copy this, and I'm going to paste it in here. Right? So let me put it in there, right there. Okay, position relative, right? So let me render that and let me show you what it renders. See that? The position, this portrait was moved right up 30 pixels. The landscape was moved to the right 30 pixels, right? So notice the dimension portrait, and there it is, position relative, there it is. It's saying, notice this div, see this div? The background is yellow. The dimension is portrait, that means it's taller, then it's wider. And then inside, it has another div that has the text portrait. And it's nudging it, says, move me where I would normally fall, right? And nudge me down and then right a little bit, right? As established by this. It says, okay, my position is relative to where I would normally be. Move me down from the top, move me down 20, and then from the left, move me right 20. Okay. And then now this landscape here, says position relative, nudge me up and right. Okay, and what this says is that let's see what that renders. Position. Oh, did I not render this? This is not defined somewhere. Did I not paste it here? Oh, there it is. Relative meaning from the bottom, move me up 30 pixels. That's why this is 30 pixels right here. And then from the left, move me 30 pixels to the right. Right? So it's 30 pixels here, right there. Right? So 30 pixels from where I would normally be from the bottom and from the left. Okay. So yeah. So notice that if I scroll, the whole thing scrolls together. See that? The thing scrolls together. But check this out. In the absolute, let's take a look at this example. I'll copy that, and I'm going to put it right here. Paste it right there. This declares. Let's look at this real quick. This says, wait, absolute. Wait a minute. What am I copying and pasting? Absolute. Relative. Okay. So I'm going to this portrait. I'm applying position absolute 1010, right? This div, I'm applying a 50-50, and then 120-20, right? And they are declared here. Let's look at the declaration. Let's copy that and paste them in the CSS, and I'll paste it right here down here. Meaning I'm setting the position absolute, meaning that it is measured not from where I would normally be. It is measured from the top left corner of the screen, right? Meaning move me down 10 pixels and then from the left, 10 pixels. Here, again, also absolute, and move me down 10 pixels, and then from the left, 50 pixels. And then finally, this one says from the top 20 pixels and from the left 120 pixels, right? So let's see what that renders. Let's save that. Let's close that and let's refresh. So there's absolute, right? So notice it's a so it's not quite doing what it's supposed what I said. It's 1010. That is true. It's 1010, but it's doing it from here, which is relative. That's why it's not doing what I said. Let me make it. There it is. Right. It is measuring here from the 0, 0, right there, 0, 0, measuring 10 down and 10 from the left. See that? Which is this one. Right. It's this right here from 10, 10. Then this is 50, 50, which is 50 from the top and 50 from the left. See that? And then this one is 20 from the top, so 20 from the top, and then 120, right, from the left, right? So from this 0, 0. Now you can change what this 0, 0 is. Where is it measuring that position there, right? By making by defining a new 0, 0. Right, a new 0, 0, and the way you do that is what I did here is that you can declare something to be position relative, and now this becomes a new 0, 0. So all these divs, this portrait, this landscape, this square, now are measured from the closest relative position, which is right here. It's right there, right? So if I refresh, right, there it is. So it's measured now from wherever that is here, position relative. Okay. And finally, just one more example. What I wanted to point out is fixed. So check this out, because this is going to screw with your mind a little bit. So here's position fixed. Okay. And right now it renders like that. Right. It's just a fixed position, and it just doesn't do anything. Because I haven't yet defined what position fixed is, right? So it's just scrolling like a normal div. It's square, right? Square, it's blue, it's white, blah, blah, blah. But if I define the fixed, right? If I copy this and I move it over to the CSS here, right? And go all the way down. I'm saying that it's not relative, not absolute, it's actually fixed. And I'm saying that from the bottom, put it 50% in the middle of the window. Okay, from the bottom, 50% of the height of the window, and then from the right, I want to be 0 pixels. So I want to be stuck to the right, all the way to the right, 0, right? So check this out, right? And now I'm going to refresh. So look what happens to this fixed here. Look what happens. Right? If I refresh, it's going to go stuck to the right, and also 50% of the screen. Right? So let's refresh. See that? Look at that. This bottom is half the width height of the window, and my right hand side is totally stuck and flush with the right of the screen. See that? And now that's not the most weirdest part. Check this out. If I start scrolling, look at that. It does not scroll with the content. See that? Look at that. It's not scrolling with the content, because now this is not measured against any other element on the screen. It is measured with wherever the window is, the whole window. So the only way to move this is to move the whole window. See that? If I move the window, then the fixed position moves around. Okay, but it does not scroll with the rest of the content. See that? That's pretty cool. Anyway, let's leave it here. Please get started with assignment 3. I know that some of you might already started, and if you've run into issues, please search us out in the office hours. I'll have my office hours tomorrow at 8 a.m. If you need help, please come. All right. Thank you, everyone.